Hey Danny, how's it going, man? Thanks for your work in week two. Good stuff. Just a quick reply video here to first. I think I'm definitely open to other ways of translating, interpreting adikia in terms of the unrighteousness or injustice that God's wrath is revealed against. Um, I guess I don't think of it as like a technical term. And sometimes, depending on how we use these terms, they become somewhat technical. But my sense is that Paul is using the term very broadly for human conduct that is remembered in Scripture as, um, what shall we say, as what God's law opposes. It's remembered in Scripture as the wickedness of the human, that it is the purpose of God's law to expose and work at addressing. So I think we could talk about wickedness, unrighteousness, justice, or injustice. It's often opposed in Paul's letters themselves with the truth, which is interesting. Um, And then Paul, I think in chapter 9 uses this term rhetorically to say, well, that God is not unjust, is God. And this has to do with God's election. And so I guess the thing maybe that's important for me in terms of a distinction is that I don't think that it's just a status of people. And that's sometimes how the more kind of forensic Protestant tradition has been apt to interpret this kind of language, as if what Paul is uh, concerned with is the status of human beings before God rather than the way that human beings behave. And I think it's clearly the latter. So that's what I'd say about adikia. In terms of what you're saying here in the second response forum, uh, about sort of the particularity versus universality that is in view, others have written about this in your group as well. Um, I guess the way that I want to respond to that is Paul does mean to make universal claims about the human, but they are claims based on the particular way in which God has been revealed and the particular people of Israel through whom God has been revealed. So we need to sort of try to hold that, I think, in tension. Um, the fact that I think Paul is talking about particular instances of sin, unrighteousness, injustice. When he's talking about the sexual sins, I think he's talking about particular instances of same-sex abuse, some of others, rather than referencing some kind of generic uh, same-sex behavior. Um, but all of that is not about exonerating certain people or certain groups in the world as unaffected by these sins. Instead, I would say, again, the particular instances of sin that Paul highlights are, and I think you get this articulated well, are something that every human community has in their history, has inherited, and therefore characterizes their life. And that's why the upshot of it is that there is no human being or human group or human community that is authorized by God as the judge, because all manifest adikia, all are lawbreakers, this sort of thing. So that's what I'm trying to get at. And my concern with the way Eliot reads this passage, and I have a lot of sympathy with him on just the general tenor of Romans, and I think what he says about Judeans and whatnot, there's a lot to like about that. But the way that he takes Paul's rhetorical edge in chapter 1 to be the imperial family, imperial politics, that doesn't strike me as right, because it doesn't seem to me that Paul would expect the audience to feel indicted by that. Instead, the audience has already joined an anti-imperial movement. That's what this letter sort of shows us. They've already committed themselves to Jesus as Lord rather than the Caesar. So they don't need to be persuaded that, the imperial family or Roman politics is full of idolatry and injustice. They need to be persuaded that they remain heirs to the same kind of injustice that has characterized the empire. They haven't somehow been elevated above the empire or above one another as judges now that they have embraced Israel's God as their God and Jesus as the Lord. Instead, now what they have done is surrendered themselves to God's judgment, and that is sort of mediated in the community and beyond by faith. So that's what is at stake for me in trying to get at the rhetorical edge of what Paul is doing in chapter 1. Again, good stuff in your responses in week 2, man. I don't know if you're still in town. I think you're on your way to the UK. So if you're on your way, hope you're having a safe trip. And if you're already there, hope you're getting settled well. And we'll be in touch.